constable. The mob quickened their pace. Shouting and whooping like savages, they came rushing on pell-mell, and in a few seconds he was bandied from hand to hand in the heart of a crowd of men. "Halloa!" cried a voice he knew, as the man who spoke came cleaving through the throng. "Where is he? Give him to me. Don't hurt him. How now, old Jack?" Mr Willet looked at him, and saw it was Hugh, but he said nothing, and thought nothing. "These lads are thirsty and must drink," cried Hugh, thrusting him back towards the house. "Bustle, Jack, bustle. Show us the best, the very best, the overproof that you keep for your own drinking, Jack." John faintly articulated the words, "Who's to pay?" "He says, who's to pay?" cried Hugh, with a roar of laughter which was loudly echoed by the crowd. Then turning to John, he added, "Pay? Why, nobody." John stared round at the mass of faces, some grinning, some fierce, some lighted up by torches, some indistinct, some dusky and shadowy, some looking at him, some at his house, some at each other; and while he was, as he thought, in the very act of doing so, found himself, without any consciousness of having moved, in the bar, sitting down in an arm-chair, and watching the destruction of his property, as if it were some queer play or entertainment, of an astonishing and stupefying nature, but having no reference to himself that he could make out at all. Yes, here was the bar that the boldest never entered without special invitation, the sanctuary, the mystery, the hallowed ground. Here it was, crammed with men, clubs, sticks, torches, pistols, filled with a deafening noise, oaths, shouts, screams, hootings, changed all at once into a bear garden, a madhouse, an infernal temple, men darting in and out by door and window, smashing the glass, turning the taps, drinking liquor out of china punch bowls, sitting astride of casks, smoking private and personal pipes, cutting down the sacred grove of lemons, hacking and hewing at the celebrated cheese, breaking open inviolable drawers, putting things in their pockets which didn't belong to them, dividing his own money before his own eyes, wantonly wasting, breaking, pulling down, and tearing up. Nothing quiet, nothing private, men everywhere, above, below, overhead, in the bedrooms, in the kitchen, in the yard, in the stables, clambering in at windows when there were doors wide open, dropping out of windows when the stairs were handy, leaping over the banisters into chasms of passages, new faces and figures presenting themselves every instant, some yelling, some singing, some fighting, some breaking glass and crockery, some laying the dust with the liquor they couldn't drink, some ringing the bells till they pulled them down, others beating them with pokers till they beat them into fragments. More men still, more, swarming on like insects, noise, smoke, light, darkness, frolic, anger, laughter, groans, plunder, fear, and ruin. Nearly all the time while John looked on at this bewildering scene, Hugh kept near him, and though he was the loudest, wildest, most destructive villain there, he saved his old master's bones a score of times. Nay, even when Mr Tappertit, excited by liquor, came up, and in assertion of his prerogative, politely kicked old John Willet on the shins, Hugh bade him return the compliment, and if old John had had sufficient presence of mind to understand this whispered direction, and to profit by it, he might no doubt, under Hugh's protection, have done so with impunity. At length the band began to reassemble outside the house, and to call to those within to join them, for they were losing time. These murmurs increasing and attaining a high pitch, Hugh and some of those who yet lingered in the bar, and who plainly were the leaders of the troop, took counsel together, apart, as to what was to be done with John to keep him quiet until their Chigwell work was over. Some proposed to set the house on fire and leave him in it; others that he should be reduced to a state of temporary insensibility by knocking on the head; others that he should be sworn to sit where he was until tomorrow at the same hour; others again that he should be gagged and taken off with them under a sufficient guard. All these propositions being overruled, it was concluded at last to bind him in his chair, and a word was passed for Dennis. 'Look'ee here, Jack,' said Hugh, striding up to him. 'We are going to tie you, hand and foot, but otherwise you won't be hurt. Do you hear?' John Willet looked at another man, as if he didn't know which was the speaker, and muttered something about an ordinary every Sunday at 2 o'clock. 'You won't be hurt, I tell you. Jack, do you hear me?' roared Hugh, impressing the assurance upon him by means of a heavy blow on the back. 'He's so dead scared, he's wool gathering, I think. Give him a drop of something to drink here. Hand over, one of you.' A glass of liquor being passed forward, Hugh poured the contents down old John's throat. Mr Willet feebly smacked his lips, thrust his hand into his pocket, and inquired what was to pay, adding, as he looked vacantly round, that he believed there was a trifle of broken glass. 'He's out of his senses for the time, it's my belief,' said Hugh, after shaking him, without any visible effect upon his system, until his keys rattled in his pocket. 'Where's that Dennis?' The word was again passed, and presently Mr Dennis, with a long cord bound about his middle, something after the manner of a friar, came hurrying in, attended by a bodyguard of half a dozen of his men. 'Come, be alive here!' cried Hugh, stamping his foot upon the ground. 'Make haste!' Dennis, with a wink and a nod, unwound the cord from about his person, and raising his eyes to the ceiling, looked all over it, and round the walls and cornice, with a curious eye, then shook his head. 'Move, man, can't you?' cried Hugh, with another impatient stamp of his foot. 'Are we to wait here till the cry has gone for 10 miles round, and our work's interrupted?' 'It's all very fine talking, brother,' answered Dennis, stepping towards him, 'but unless,' and here he whispered in his ear, 'unless we do it over the door, it can't be done at all in this here room.' 'What can't?' Hugh demanded. 'What can't?' retorted Dennis. 'Why, the old man can't.' 'Why, you weren't going to hang him?' cried Hugh. 'No, brother,' returned the hangman with a stare. 'What else?' Hugh made no answer, but snatching the rope from his companion's hand, proceeded to bind old John himself. But his very first move was so bungling and unskilful, that Mr Dennis entreated, almost with tears in his eyes, that he might be permitted to perform the duty. Hugh consenting, he achieved it in a twinkling. 'There,' he said, looking mournfully at John Willet, who displayed no more emotion in his bonds than he had shown out of them. 'That's what I call pretty and workmanlike. He's quite a picter now. But, brother, just a word with you, now that he's ready trussed, as one may say. Wouldn't it be better for all parties if we was to work him off? It would read uncommon well in the newspapers, it would indeed. The public would think a great deal more on us.' Hugh, inferring what his companion meant, rather from his gestures than his technical mode of expressing himself, to which, as he was ignorant of his calling, he wanted the clue, rejected this proposition for the second time, and gave the word 'forward,' which was echoed by 100 voices from without. 'To the Warren!' shouted Dennis as he ran out, followed by the rest. 'A witness's house, my lads!' A loud yell followed, and the whole throng hurried off, mad for pillage and destruction. Hugh lingered behind for a few moments, to stimulate himself with more drink, and to set all the taps running, a few of which had accidentally been spared. Then, glancing round the despoiled and plundered room, through whose shattered window the rioters had thrust the Maypole itself, for even that had been sawn down, lighted a torch, clapped the mute and motionless John Willet on the back, and waving his light above his head, and uttering a fierce shout, hastened after his companions. Chapter 54.